The COVID-19 pandemic has made digital transformation for businesses in Malaysia more critical than before. The nation is heading to new directions due to technological advancement and even new work cultures. Digital transformation for SMEs has been an issue which has been looked at for some time now. But due to the pandemic, this has been put on fast forward. How will our digital transformation help our economic recovery? All these and more in just a moment. Good evening and welcome to another episode of TV3's flagship business program, Money Matters, and I am Zahir Kelvinong Abdullah. A member of Axiata advisory panel, Tan Sri Jamaludin Ibrahim, is with us virtually. Thank you, Tan Sri, for being part of Money Matters this evening.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you with us. Tan Sri, can I start off by asking you with regards to the National Recovery Plan announced by the Prime Minister on Tuesday? What are your thoughts on the four-phase strategy that has been announced?
Again, thank you, Kevin, for having me. Nice to be here. Back to your question. I guess first I must say that I might not be the best person to answer the question. I'm not an expert. But if I think logically from a man on the street point of view, I think it's a good plan. If you look at the plan, do we need an exit plan? For sure. Does it have to be in phases? For sure, so that we can plan properly, that we can manage the expectation, the people and businesses, and it's a more business-like kind of project management. And lastly, the need for a threshold, because anything can happen, and we need the ability to adjust according to the threshold. Yeah, so it's a good plan. And I'm looking also from other considerations, like balancing between life and livelihood. Is it easy to say one or the other, but someone has to balance it, and you have to look at the capacity of the hotel, the ICU wards, and also from the government affordability. All things considered, I think it's a good plan. All of us, though, wants it to be faster, but the plan is realistic, I think.
Yeah, but again, the plan also depends a lot on the situation with the COVID numbers and how we respond to it.
That's right. And hence, there's a threshold, which I thought is a very good point. Let's get the understanding, expectation very clear. It depends on the three threshold items. So, we will adjust. I'm sure the government will adjust accordingly.
Right. Now, Tan Sri, the digital transformation for businesses is the key now for our economic recovery. But do you think that our SMEs and companies have the finance and the cloud to embrace this quickly?
Kevin, this is a tough question. Do you mind if I just give a perspective and context before I answer the question?
Sure.
Yeah, so first, we all know how important digital transformation is. In fact, is perhaps the biggest driver of the GDP in the future. Yeah, today is about, last year it was about 20% of the GDP, and in the future we're looking at 22 to 23% in the next few years. Yeah, so it's very big, and it's not just an industry by itself, but it's also the catalyst or enabler for many or maybe all industries. So that's how important it is. Now, coming back to your question on SME itself is pretty big. Yes, it's 39% of GDP and almost half of the people of the population working for SME. So that's important. Now, therefore, I'm glad you asked that question, because it is central to the question and perhaps the most important segment that we have to focus on when we talk about digitization. Yeah. So the question, is it now? Are we ready? If you look from the SME standpoint, there was a survey done by Maxis last year and also by Siemens. It ranges from 50 to 59%, or 58% rather, were not ready. So in that respect, we have a long way to go. Things might change this year and definitely change for the better, but still we have a long way to go. So in terms of the financing in the cloud that you mentioned, is the issue is less of, let me backtrack. The SME might be a too general word, actually, frankly, because it depends whether you're the medium, the small, or the micro SMEs, yeah? Now, the medium and small generally mixed, but mostly ready, and they are, still a long way to go, but they are on the right track because they have the financial capability in general. The problem is the micro SMEs, which account for what 70 to 75% for all the SMEs. In general, they are not ready, and this is where the problem is. When we talk about 75%, 50 to 55 or 58% not ready. If you look at micro SMEs, the numbers will be a lot higher. And this is where we have to focus on and to get them ready. So, the issues is, before we go to the financing, the issues, it's not just about financing, it's about awareness, about knowledge, skill set, technology, your human capital, and so on and so forth. So financing is just one of the issues. And if you look at financing, frankly, the onboarding of the SMEs are not so expensive. These days you need a phone and maybe at most an iPad, but the ongoing expenses will be where the challenge will be. Yeah, what I mean by that is that upon onboarding to e-commerce or through Facebook or through e-commerce platform or Instagram, the delivery itself it will be very expensive for them.
So that is the main reason why the micro SMEs are not embracing digitalization as fast as they can. Is that correct?
Like I said, it's a combination of all, awareness, the skill set. Many do not even know where do I get started in the first place, yeah? And financing is one of them. And obviously, like I said, I was about to elaborate that the getting on board is not so expensive, but can you imagine, the margin for each one of them very, very small. Let's talk about the FMB micro SMEs. The margin very small. For them to do delivery, they have to pay to the tune of 30% to Grab or equivalent, right? And there's very little for them. Not to mention the other costs involved in the delivery and production. So that is the challenge for the SMEs.
Right. Tan Sri, we've just got to take a very short breather right now. And when we return, we'll continue to discuss more on this topic, a follow-up on what Tan Sri has said, as well as the 5G rollout strategy. But before that, find us on Twitter and share your thoughts on the digital transformation for businesses. Welcome back, and you're still tuning into Money Matters as we speak to Tan Sri Jamaludin Ibrahim of Axiata Advisory Panel. Before the break, Tan Sri, you were saying that there were some problems with micro SMEs with regards to getting into digitalization. Now, would this hold back our economic recovery?
Well, the answer is to a large extent yes. If we have not, as a country, as a community, upgrade the micro SMEs. They also employ almost half of the population of Malaysia, the working population of Malaysia. So yes, it could, if we not done enough for them.
Right. Now, moving forward and looking at the financial technology in Malaysia and the push, as you mentioned, for more companies to move towards digitalization, this would make finance automation easy for the rakyat to access and get very up-to-date financial information. But wouldn't this require the population to be tech-savvy and having to be familiar with different financial apps?
In general, yes, but I don't see that's a major problem, frankly. Well, let's backtrack again. When you talk about finance, technology, or fintech, in this case, you're talking about payment, you're talking about lending, and remittance, and many other related functions of finance technology. So, yes, you obviously, by definition, you need to use some kind of device, electronic device. Normally, mobile phone is good enough. And someone needs to be able to know how to use the phone, download the apps, and so on and so forth. But I think it's not really a major issue today because, majority of people are quite familiar with that. They use WhatsApp, they use SMS before that, and more using Facebook, Instagram, and so on. Now, definitely, there's a small population that are using the phone, but maybe not all the other features of the phone. That could be a problem, but I think it's a matter of time. And the beauty of the situation is that you are forced to do it anyway. Yeah, because when you make payments, as you know, the government has announced that by end of 2022, the only way you can make payment to the government is through M-payment. So that forced the issue, and people have no choice but to use the mobile phone and technology to make that payment. And eventually lending and so on will be all automated.
Right. Now, looking at the 5G rollout, Tan Sri, the arrival of 5G obviously has a lot of promise and is something that everyone is waiting for, as it will revolutionize the internet and make smart cities basically a reality. But looking at our 5G rollout, are our plans enough to fast-track this rollout?
Oh boy, that's a tough one because there's so many things required for that to be done. What I can say first, publicly, what we were told that the rollout will be aimed to be done by end of this year for perhaps KL and Putrajaya. Yeah, so obviously that's not enough. We have to accelerate that. So in that respect, we have to do by next year. We have to do a lot better and to accelerate the whole program. But in terms of the willingness of the government and the readiness of the industry and the market and the technology in general, I think we can accelerate that further and meet the needs of the community and leapfrog Malaysia to the world of technology.
How do you propose we can get a faster rollout, as you mentioned?
In a way, it's a chicken and egg, right? If you think from one point of view, is that the government sort of resolved the problem of 5G economics. 5G, as you perhaps have heard, is a tough business case for most operators because you don't really get additional income from the customers because of 5G. People don't pay extra for 5G, except when there are new 5G applications, typically business type of applications. But people won't develop the application if there's no network. So we're going to that chicken and egg vicious cycle. But I'm glad they decided to just break the vicious cycle by the government owning it and helping to roll out fast. So in that respect, one aspect of that is to make it more economical for the industry to roll out. That's one big plus already. Now, the other aspect is to do more catalysts or catalytic applications or use cases, right? So in this respect, both the government and the private sector have to take the lead together, separately and together. So applications like telemedicine, application like that requires AR and VR, applications that for the serious gamers and so on and so forth. That will in a way spur the growth of the rollout of 5G.
Right. But Tan Sri, you mentioned just now that, that the government basically will not own it. So it will be owned by a single entity based on reports saying that it will be owned by the Digital Nasional Berhad. But the government will be paying for this to a tune of 15 billion ringgit. Is that correct?
Well, as I heard it publicly, I don't have the numbers myself. That's what I was told.
Okay. So looking at the other approach on the reports of saying that it's being handled by a single entity. Like Singapore and Thailand basically have said that they are not taking this approach because they said that they could have problems like delays in rollouts, perhaps inefficient utilization of the frequency spectrum, and maybe even lack of competition. So what would you think the repercussions could be for us in Malaysia if this was to happen?
I won't comment much on that. There are pros and cons of the approach by the government. And obviously, anyone can argue on both sides of the coin. But one thing, I'd rather pinpoint the benefit. The benefit is to do it economically so that we duplicate less relative to doing everyone does it, and to do it fast. If we can do it, fine, let's do it fast. I think we've passed that debate, and right now the issue is how do we roll out fast? How do we make it economical to the operators? And finally, how do we make it accessible and affordable to the rakyat and to the businesses?
Right. So basically, what you're saying is that we should not be taking unnecessary risks, which would be critical to our future economic growth for digitalization.
Yeah, we have no, I think, no choice anymore. We shouldn't debate too much of that. Our debate should be how do we get this rollout fast, cheaper, and faster.
Right. Okay, Tan Sri, we've just got to go for another break. Coming up, we'll find out more on boosting the growth of digital economy. In the meantime, find us on Twitter and share your thoughts on the discussion so far, and we'll be right back. Thanks for joining us as we discuss further on the digitalization of businesses with Tan Sri Jamaludin Ibrahim of Axiata Advisory Panel. Tan Sri, under the Permakassar Plus, the government has continued to provide incentives that would boost the growth of digital economy and ensure business continuity and sustainability for eligible micro, small and medium enterprises that you mentioned just now as well. But are these incentives sufficient enough to provide them with the means to digitalize their operations?
If you look at Permakassar Plus by itself, it doesn't specifically relate to the digitization of SME. Yeah, so it does give a boost to sustain and to support the SMEs in general, but not digitization per se. So if you don't mind, let me backtrack a bit, talk about what the government is doing from a broader perspective, not just Permakassar Plus, but the overall digitization support of SME. Yeah, and from what I've seen publicly, yeah, the government has in plan to put into the tune of almost 20 billion, yeah, financial and non-financial support to SME in general, and a significant portion of that, I do not know exactly how much, but definitely a couple of billions is the digitization support to uplift the SMEs, especially micro SMEs, to get them on board in the whole process of digitization. Yeah? And we are talking about, as mentioned earlier, or rather, we're talking about to the tune of about 700,000 plus micro SMEs and perhaps additional 500,000 informal businesses, which are mostly micro SMEs. So you're talking about 1.2 million of them. In that respect, that's a large number of them. Now, coming back to your question, is that sufficient? I don't have a good feel whether it's sufficient, but if you look at the number involved, it should be sufficient. And the issue, like I said, is first to get them, finance them, to get them on board, to train them, help them to be able to digitize themselves and their businesses. But also, like I said, there are a lot of effort should be done also from training and development, awareness, campaigns, and get them up to speed, not just from a technical standpoint, but also from marketing standpoint in the world of technology, related but two different things. So in that respect, in terms of the plan government have, in terms of the money allocated, I think it's generally quite sufficient, but the delivery, implementation, a lot more to be done, I presume.
Right. But Tan Sri, again, it goes back to the micro SMEs themselves on how they can adapt to it.
I guess the at least one positive aspect of COVID, we all know, is people have no choice, be it men on the street and micro SMEs, to get on board. And the only way to sell is through the technology. Some people do it simply via SMS to sell their products and services. Some people WhatsApp. Some people upgraded a bit through Facebook and Instagram. And some on board nicely into the more sophisticated e-commerce. In that respect, many of them have done that, but as you heard the statistics before, a lot of them are still lagging behind. And I'm coming back to my point earlier, we need to train them, we need to make them aware. I guess there's a lot of hand-holding required for the next few months and even years to get them on board and to be able for them to run the business digitally.
Right. Again, it boils down to what we talked about earlier, whether this would hamper our economic recovery. But let's move on to what the Entrepreneur Development and Cooperatives Ministry said, that 90% of micro, small and medium enterprises would risk closure if the MCO were to continue. And the ministry is also looking to undertake intervention measures to offer financial assistance and targeted moratorium where this is concerned. But again, what you mentioned just now, it boils down to the companies themselves embracing this new technology.
Yeah, I heard the announcement. I think, of course, I can't comment whether the number is 90% or so, but certainly a large number will be in jeopardy. Nothing to do with digitization per se, it's just pure survival being closed down. But obviously, with digitization, many of them still manage to operate operate and being able to at least partially support themselves and the business. And I think you mentioned about them getting on board, but I guess it takes us as the government, the private sectors and all that to help them get on board. I think, as you know, MDEC and many other government agencies are helping them. Similarly, many of the private parties, telcos and many others, are also helping them to get on board in the world of digitization. I think it takes an effort by all. It's not. I think it's a joint responsibility, private sector, and themselves, to get going in the world of digitization.
Right. Tan Sri, last question before we go. Because of all this digitalization taking place and companies wanting to embrace this, as you mentioned, how can issues like cybersecurity, because this is basically a main concern by a lot of companies embracing digitalization, how can issues like cybersecurity and privacy be managed efficiently?
Okay, that's a tough question, Kevin, because as we progress as a country, as businesses into the world of digitization, we are more and more exposed to cybersecurity. We are more exposed to privacy issues. So that's a fact. I think we can't run away from that. However, there's a lot of concurrent efforts by both companies and the government, and certainly we need to help the people at large, the community at large, to be aware of the implications of cybersecurity. There are a lot of scams and malwares and so on that have affected them. There's a lot of awareness are still required. At the same time, the applications that people are developing must be able to be at least foolproof, to be able to prevent cybersecurity. It will never be zero, but we can minimize that.
Minimize it, right. Tan Sri, thank you very much for appearing on Money Matters. It has been a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Tan Sri Jamaludin, for spending your time with us on Money Matters. And that's all the time we have for this episode of Money Matters. We'll be back next week, same day and time, for another in-depth discussion with more money insights that matter. I'm Zahir Kelvin Ong Abdullah. Thanks for watching and stay safe.